In September of 1620, a merchant ship called the Mayflower set sail from Plymouth, a port on the southern coast of England. Normally, the Mayflower's cargo was wine and dry goods, but on this trip, the ship carried passengers, 102 of them, all hoping to start a new life on the other side of the Atlantic. Nearly 40 of these passengers were Protestant separatists. They called themselves saints, who hoped to establish a new church in the New World. Today we often refer to the colonists who crossed the Atlantic on the Mayflower as pilgrims. A prominent merchant agreed to advance the money for their journey. The Virginia Company gave them permission to establish a settlement or plantation on the East Coast roughly between Chesapeake Bay and the mouth of the Hudson River. And the King of England gave them permission to leave the Church of England, provided they carried themselves peaceably. In August of 1620, a group of about 40 saints joined a much larger group of secular colonists called strangers, and set sail from Southampton, England, on 2 merchant ships, the Mayflower and the Speedwell. The Speedwell began to leak almost immediately. However, the ships headed back to port in Plymouth. The travelers squeezed themselves and the belongings onto the Mayflower, a cargo ship about 80 feet long and 24 feet wide, and capable of carrying 180 tons of cargo. The Mayflower set sail once again under the direction of Captain Christopher Jones. Because of the delay caused by the Speedwell, the Mayflower had to cross the Atlantic in the height of storm season. As a result, the journey was horrible and unpleasant. Many passengers were seasick and they could hardly get up. The waves were so rough that one stranger was swept overboard. After 66 days, or roughly 2 months at sea, the ship finally reached the New World, where the Mayflower's passengers found an abandoned Indian village and not much else. They also found that they were in the wrong place. Cape Cod was located well north of Virginia's Company territory. Technically, the Mayflower colonists did not have a right to be there. So in order to establish themselves as a legitimate colony called Plymouth, which was named after the English port from which they had departed, these circumstances, 41 of the saints and strangers drafted and signed a document called the Mayflower Compact. This compact promised to create a civil body politic, governed by elected officials with just and equal laws. It also swore allegiance to the King of England. It was the first document to establish self-government in the New World, and this early attempt at democracy set the stage for future colonists seeking independence from the British Empire. The colonists spent the first winter living on board the Mayflower. Only 53 passengers and half the crew survived. Women were particularly hard hit. Of the 19 women who had boarded the Mayflower, only 5 survived the cold New England winter. Confined to the ship where disease and cold were rampant, the Mayflower sailed back to England in April of 1621, and once the group moved ashore, the colonists faced even more challenges. During their first winter in America, more than half of the Plymouth colonists died from malnutrition, disease, and exposure to the harsh New England weather. In fact, without the help from the Native Americans, it is likely that none of the colonists would have survived. An English-speaking Abenaki named Samoset helped the colonists form an alliance with the local Wampanoags, who taught them how to hunt local animals, gather shellfish, and grow corn, beans, and squash. At the end of the next summer, the Plymouth colonists celebrated their first successful harvest with a 3-day festival of Thanksgiving. We still commemorate this feast and remember it as the first Thanksgiving, though it did not occur on the 4th Thursday in November like it does today, but sometimes between late September and mid-November of 1621. The colonists were outnumbered 2-1 by their guests, and attendee Edward Winslow noted that there were many of the Indians coming among us, and amongst the rest their greatest king, Massasoit, with some 90 men. Eventually, the Plymouth colonists were absorbed into the Puritan Massachusetts Bay Colony. Still, the Mayflower saints and their descendants remained convinced that they alone had been specifically chosen by God to act as a beacon for Christians around the world. As one small candle may light 1,000, Bradford wrote, so the light here kindled hath shone to many, yea, in some sort, to our whole nation. Today, visitors wishing to see Plymouth Colony as it appeared during the time of the Mayflower can witness reenactments of the first Thanksgiving and more at Plymouth Plantation. No one knows for sure what happened to the original Mayflower. The last record of the ship was an assessment of her value in 1624. After that, she disappeared from maritime records. Several places in England claim to have a piece of the original ship, but there is no historical proof to support these claims. In 1957, England built a replica of the Mayflower and sailed it to the United States as a gift. The Mayflower II was built from 1955 to 1957 in the town of Brixham in Devon, England, by the skilled shipwrights at the Upham shipyard. The Mayflower II is a square, rugged vessel that is about 25 feet wide and 106 feet long. Displacing 236 tons of water, she has 4 masts, including a mainmast, foremast, mizzen, and sprit, with a total of 6 sails. The Mayflower II is a seaworthy sailing vessel, and since the year 2000 she has sailed to Providence, Rhode Island, Boston, Massachusetts, and Provincetown, Massachusetts. She sailed Cape Cod Bay to celebrate her 50th anniversary in 2007. And Mayflower II has also visited several other ports on the East Coast since she first arrived in America in 1957. One of the most notable differences between her and the original Mayflower is a large modern staircase between the main deck and the lower decks. In the 17th century, ladders were used. Electric lights illuminating the dark corners of the lower decks were also not standard in the 1600s. There were other minor modifications made to Mayflower II to make sure that she would be more accessible, safe, and comfortable for the visiting public. Today she sits in her port in Plymouth, Massachusetts, getting ready to celebrate the 400th year since the original Mayflower made landfall. She was just fully restored and returned from Connecticut to celebrate the special anniversary.